Have you ever felt like nobody really cares about your life story? It's a pretty common phenomenon, and today we're going to explore why it is that people tend to tune out when you start sharing your personal experiences. Maybe you've had it happen to you in a conversation where you're trying to tell someone about something that happened to you, and you can just see their eyes glazing over. Or maybe you've been on the other side of that conversation, struggling to feign interest in someone else's monologue. It's not that people are inherently selfish or uninterested in others, it's just that we all have a limited capacity for listening to and processing information. And when someone starts telling a long, rambling story, it can be hard to focus. I mean, let's be real, we've all been there, stuck in a conversation where someone is dominating the airtime, and we're just counting down the seconds until we can politely excuse ourselves. But there's more to it than just attention span. There are also social norms and cultural expectations that play into this phenomenon. In many social situations, it's just not considered polite to dominate the conversation with your own stories and experiences. And yet, so many of us struggle to find that balance between sharing our thoughts and listening to others. So what does it mean when nobody wants to hear your life story? Is it a reflection of our own self-importance, or is it just a fact of life in a busy, noisy world? Over the next few minutes, we're going to explore some of the reasons why people might not want to hear your life story, and what that means for the way we communicate with each other. Oversharing is a major culprit when it comes to people tuning out of conversations. We've all been guilty of it at some point, getting carried away with our own thoughts and experiences, and forgetting that our listeners might not be as invested as we are. It's like that friend who always has to one-up you with their own stories, or the coworker who can't stop talking about their personal drama. After a while, you start to feel like you're trapped in some kind of never-ending monologue, and you just want to escape. And it's not just about the quantity of information being shared, it's also about the quality. Sometimes we share things that are just too personal or too intense for the situation, and that can be really alienating for our listeners. I mean, think about it. Would you really want to hear about your acquaintance's digestive issues at a cocktail party? Probably not. And yet, some people feel compelled to share that kind of information without considering how it might land with others. Oversharing can also be a way of seeking validation or attention, and that can be really off-putting for others. When we're constantly seeking reassurance or approval, it can come across as needy or self-centered. And let's be real, who doesn't have better things to do than listen to someone else's problems all day? I'm not saying we shouldn't be empathetic or supportive, but there's a time and a place for everything, and oversharing can be a major turn-off. But what about when we're in a conversation and we do want to share our own experiences? Is it always a bad thing to talk about ourselves? Of course not. The key is to consider the context of the conversation and to make sure we're not dominating the airtime. When we're in a conversation, we should be thinking about how our words are landing with the other person and making adjustments accordingly. It's not about suppressing our own thoughts and feelings, it's about being considerate of others and creating a space for mutual sharing. When we do share our personal stories, it's essential to consider the context of the conversation. Are we in a one-on-one setting, or is it a group conversation? Are we talking to a close friend, or is it a more casual acquaintance? All of these factors can influence how our words are received, and it's our job as communicators to be aware of them. We need to think about what kind of information is appropriate for the situation and what kind of boundaries we should be respecting. For example, if we're in a business meeting, it's probably not the time to start sharing personal anecdotes unless, of course, they're directly relevant to the topic at hand. And if we're at a social gathering, we should be mindful of how our words are affecting others. Are we dominating the conversation, or are we leaving space for others to share their thoughts and experiences? It's all about finding that balance between sharing our own stories and being considerate of others. Empathy and listening are essential components of effective communication, and they're often overlooked in our culture of self-promotion. When we're in a conversation, we should be thinking about how we can support and understand the other person rather than just waiting for our turn to talk. It's not about being selfless, it's about creating a mutual exchange of ideas and perspectives. And when we do share our own stories, it should be in the spirit of connection and community rather than just seeking attention or validation. When we're talking to others, we need to be aware of how our words are affecting them. Are we evoking feelings of discomfort or awkwardness? Are we sharing things that are better left unsaid? It's not about being PC or avoiding controversy, it's about being considerate of others and creating a safe space for open and honest communication. We need to think about the impact of our words and make adjustments accordingly. For example, if we're talking to someone who's going through a tough time, we should be sensitive to their emotions and avoid sharing our own stories of woe. It's not about suppressing our own feelings, it's about being present for the other person and offering support and empathy. And if we're in a conversation where we're sharing personal experiences, we should be mindful of how they might be affecting others. Are we dominating the conversation, or are we leaving space for others to share their thoughts and feelings? Brevity and clarity are essential components of effective communication, and they're often lacking in our personal stories. When we're talking to others, we should be thinking about how we can convey our message in a clear and concise way, rather than rambling on for hours. It's not about dumbing down our ideas, it's about being considerate of others and respecting their time and attention. We need to focus on the key points we want to make and avoid getting bogged down in unnecessary details. When we're sharing our personal stories, we should be thinking about how they relate to the conversation at hand. Are we sharing relevant information, or are we just indulging in a personal anecdote? It's not about suppressing our own thoughts and feelings, it's about being mindful of how they're affecting others. We need to focus on the key points we want to make and avoid getting sidetracked by irrelevant details. Audience awareness is crucial when it comes to sharing our personal stories. We need to be aware of who we're talking to and what kind of information is appropriate for the situation. Are we talking to a close friend, or is it a more casual acquaintance? Are we in a one-on-one setting, or is it a group conversation? All of these factors can influence how our words are received, and it's our job as communicators to be aware of them. When we're sharing our personal stories, we should be tailoring our message to the interests and needs of our listeners. Are we talking to someone who's going through a similar experience, or is it someone who's just looking for entertainment? We need to be mindful of how our words are affecting others and make adjustments accordingly. It's not about suppressing our own thoughts and feelings, it's about being considerate of others and creating a space for mutual sharing. So how can we share our stories effectively without overwhelming or alienating our listeners? The key is to be mindful of our audience and to tailor our message accordingly. We need to focus on the key points we want to make and avoid getting bogged down in unnecessary details. And most importantly, We need to be aware of how our words are affecting others and make adjustments accordingly. In conclusion, effective communication is about connection, not just sharing. It's about being aware of our audience and tailoring our message to their needs and interests. It's about being considerate of others and creating a space for mutual sharing and understanding. So next time you're tempted to launch into a long, rambling story, take a step back and think about your audience. Are you sharing your experiences in a way that's considerate of others, or are you just seeking attention and validation? Thanks for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about your own experiences with oversharing. Have you ever felt like nobody wants to hear your life story? How do you balance sharing your own experiences with being considerate of others? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to check out my next video.